Throughout the entire history of the world, Satan has sought to establish his own kingdom here on earth. And since sin and death had entered the world, he often does that by murder and violence. This is why, preachers, you need to be carrying a gun. Now, before we get into this, I do want to take a moment and thank our sponsor, Victory Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram, for not only supporting us, but they're a natural fit for us because they have food shelters. They build orphanages all over this world. They provide hot meals in cities, including my hometown of Kansas City. They are literally being the hands and feet of Jesus Christ. So I'm going to put their link below. Check it out. You could obviously buy a car there. They ship no matter where you are in this world. However, you can also check out their Giving Hope Fund, kind of see what it is they're engaged in. It's a fascinating organization, and they have dealerships all over this country. So what are we talking about? Now, preachers carrying guns? Goodness gracious, what has this world come to? Preachers have always needed self-defense. They should have always been carrying guns. If you look at from the moment that humanity fell and violence and death entered into the world, anytime a man or woman was standing up and professing the things of God, violence sought after them. Violence sought after them because what we have is even today, we have politicians whose agenda is definitely against the Word of God. And really, we're kind of living in the most civil time in the world. But if you ever questioned authority by saying, well, wait a second, authority, the Word of God says this other thing, you were often killed for that thing. If you look at from just even biblical figures, all of them, not some of them, all of them, violence sought after them. There was a moment in time where every prophet of Israel was killed except for just a small handful because what they were saying went against the leaders. It went against the people who, I don't want to bring in politicians and leaders because it's satanic stuff. It's satanic things trying to rise up and stop the things of God. And they rise up through political figures and kings and rulers and such. And satanic devices will rise up. And if you sit there and you begin to say things that go against what Satan's agenda is, which is probably about everything you say, if you're saying it right, then violence is going to seek after you. And even if you're just a small country preacher in a little tiny church of 30 or 40 people, Satan and his third of the angels fell, and the angels are numerous that you can't count them. And a third of them have fallen, and now their place is here on earth to torment you. And if you're stopping their agenda, or you're going against their agenda, or you're starting to convince people that maybe Satan's agenda is wrong, then violence is going to seek after you. So this is why, as a preacher, as a pastor, as a priest, whatever you want to call yourself, as a man or woman of God, even not necessarily saying the things of God, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, taking care of if you are being the hands and feet of Jesus Christ, you need to be carrying a gun. And how Satan does this and how the demons do this is they don't take human form and come after you and murder you. No, they whisper in other people's ears. They convince other people that you should be their target. That somehow your voice is tormenting that. Look at David, for example. David was by far one of the most faithful servants to the king that the king probably had. He was his greatest ally in the courts, in the throne room, on the battlefield. David was his man. Even in music, he was the greatest thing that the king had. But yet, when God took his hands off then the tormentor came in to King Saul's life, and right away he looked at David and thought, I'm going to kill that guy. Why? Because David was advancing the kingdom of heaven here on earth as it is in heaven. That's why. And if you're helping advance the kingdom of heaven here on earth as it is in heaven, you need to be protecting yourself. Now, David just didn't stand there defenseless and go, oh, God's got it. No, he fled and hid and had logistics and carried weapons and killed people and defended himself with arms. his whole life, not just from Saul, but there was a moment in time where people he was so old, but they had to carry him out because he was so old when people were trying to kill him. Like, this is how it works for the men and women of God. And again, we're living in the most civil time in all of history for the most part now. And I want to remind you that, if you know your word of God, that there will be a day coming that will be a tribulation unlike the world has ever seen nor ever will, according to the mouth of Jesus Christ. That is when you should have, you really need it then, but you need it before then. There was times, again, where men and women of God, people that were professing the things of God, prophets, preachers, priests, and people just sought to kill them. I'm going to give another example. When King Jehoshaphat visited the king of Israel and he said, "Bring me the prophet," and as soon as the prophet said anything the king didn't like, he punched him in the face and threw him in jail and threatened to kill him. This is kind of how it works. You need to just be very aware that when you say or do the things of God, it is contrary, it is anti to what it is the devil is trying to do. And that's why it is so critically important. Just, goodness gracious, if you are getting up on any kind of stage, I was at the remnant meeting this last Saturday, and I trust all those, I knew I was safe and all that, but I found myself, I got out of my truck, I put a gun on my hip. This is just regular practice for me, and I was in a very safe place. Imagine if you're out on the streets. Imagine if you're, anywhere in the world is dangerous. Like, you should be carrying a gun. You should be carrying a gun. If you are being the hands and feet of Jesus Christ, you should be concealed carrying a gun everywhere you go. You should also have guns around your home. You should also have a truck gun. You should be knowing that, wickedness is in this world and it seeks to kill the men and women of God. Fact. Always has, always will, until Christ establishes his throne here on earth as it is in heaven. And until then, this is what we're dealing with, ladies and gentlemen. So it is critically important that you carry a gun if you are being the hands and feet of Jesus Christ.